Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Can we have the roll call, Mrs. Burns, please?
Mr. Congdon?
Here.
Ms. Boyle?
Here.
Mr. Feather?
Here.
Mrs. Hallenbach? Mr. Morris?
Here.
Mr. Parentano?
Here.
Mr. Rudy?
Here.
Mr. Santa? Here. Mr. Sullivan? Here. A quorum is present.
Thank you. This time, I'd like to ask everyone to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Prior to this board meeting, we met in an executive session this evening to discuss manners of employment, issues related to labor relations, and purchase or lease of real estate property. Mrs. Burns, do we have any announcements?
No announcements.
We're going to move on to the superintendent's report. Mr. Jones, please.
Okay, good evening. We were snowed out at the Public Works meeting, so I have 2 meetings worth of notes here. I'm going to kind of give you the abbreviated form of the 2, but I do have a couple nice things to talk about. First off, Schweitzer Elementary School is represented with our artwork this month here in the room, and so I want to give Ms. Troxel credit and her students. She has a nice little note in the back there describing how the artwork in this exhibit reflects the process artists follow in creating artwork. As students from the Albert Schweitzer Elementary School explore a variety of media, they're exposed to the work of professional artists, and they reflect upon that artwork as well as their own. They experience and practice the studio habits of mind, and she lists what all they are, what good artists do, and they start that at a very early age. So it's exciting to see their artwork, and we congratulate them. Also, our school-wide positive behavior program continues to grow with its success and the fact that our schools are being recognized statewide. This is not a common occurrence for this many schools in one district to have this recognition. The Burlington County Intermediate Unit made it a point to tell me as a new superintendent that I should be aware of the fact that this stands out. Neshaminy stands out as a school district committed to trying to impact positively the school environment. So it's with great pleasure that I do announce that the following schools, every school that applied this year to achieve that banner, recognizing their success and meeting the standards, include the Furtibar Elementary School, Buck Elementary School, Hoover Elementary School, the Miller Elementary School, and the Pequesson Middle School. Also, in addition to those schools, the following schools will also be recognized with a badge to add to their already existing banner, and that includes both Schweitzer and the Sandburg Middle School. So, if you're counting, that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 new and 2 who are being recognized beyond the initial stage of recognition. So that's a total of 7 of our 10 schools. So we congratulate all of them. They'll be recognized at a May program where statewide schools are coming together. Schweitzer Elementary School is also in the news because they opened up a really nice parent resource room. They had a nice night. A lot of the surrounding local support agencies for families were in attendance, and they had an open house to kick it off. But the room's available for parents to use during the course of the day if they can get in. There's resources there, a computer available for their use, and it's a nice, comfortable space that they set up for parents. Also, this is Schweitzer Day here at the meeting, but it is kind of neat to point out that the art teacher there also has 3 of her students recognized at the Pennsylvania Art Education Association Youth Arts Month exhibit on display at the Pennsylvania Department of Education building in Harrisburg. That showcase goes from February 27th all the way through April 7th. And a reception was held for friends, family, and teachers on Saturday, March 18th. And we had Peyton Glasson, a kindergartner, with his wind production, Brianna Romano, grade 2, and Sabrina Serrano, grade 3. So 3 nice opportunities for students to be recognized there at the state level, and it kind of matches with our art theme here for Schweitzer. The Harlem Wizards are coming. If you haven't seen the ad, pay attention to our Facebook. They're going to be playing here on the weekend coming up. The date is April 29th. Tickets will be on sale. There was a really neat story. It was attached to my superintendent's report back for the public works session. You can find that on our board docs feature of a student who transferred here to Neshaminy High School and happened to be a writer for the Bucks County Courier Times. There are some student writers, and this particular student made the transition to Neshaminy High School and wrote about that and did a really nice job. Talked about how that transition was a little scary, but that he felt welcomed, she felt welcomed, and so it was a Sydney Crocker, and we congratulate her. And we thank her. Strategic plan has 80 people who have volunteered, over 80 people who have volunteered to be part of implementation teams, and they're going to be meeting tomorrow to kick off implementation team oversight of our strategic plan. We have 3 teams overseeing the 3 major focuses of our strategic plan. The business office has submitted their CAFRA report. It's an annual financial report. It's available online on our website. Our website was updated. I have to thank Shirley Noth, tech here aide in our technology department, and Chris Stanley, our communications, our community relations coordinator. Both did phenomenal work, both planning for and then implementing the crossover to the new website. If you haven't had a chance to get on our website, we're really proud of the new look. We feel like it does justice to all the good stuff that's happening here at Neshaminy. Plenty of pictures, a lot of good stories, school by school similarity in the page setup so parents can move from one school to the other pretty comfortably and find things consistently. And it's an evolving process, so we're still working on all the final pieces to that. On tonight's agenda, there's a revised school calendar for the current school year as a result of 2 closings that we had as part of a snow, two snow events. And so the calendar changes for our faculty and our teachers, but not for our students, and we're fixing the graduation date. That's part of a resolution as well, June 14th. I believe that's a Wednesday. At the high school, there's going to be a senior citizens ball. That's in my superintendent's report for this evening, so you can go there for more information, but there's a phone number to call, 215-809-6100, if you know a senior citizen in our school community who's interested in going to a senior ball Friday, April 21st, from 4 to 7 at the high school. It's the 5th annual, I think. Cinderella's Closet's a really important project as well, where if you want to donate a dress for a young lady to use for the prom, they're accepting those at the high school as well. You can call the high school. I'm sure they'll accept that. We have a special thank you from me to the Facilities and Grounds Department and our Transportation Department for that last crazy snowfall. I mean, that's a lot of hard work. That was a heavy snowfall, and our place was looking good that same day, and we were able to open the next morning thanks to all that hard work. We did have a 2-hour delay, more for safety than anything else, but a lot of good work that allowed kids to get back into school, and parents appreciated that as well. And then finally, we have a presentation this evening coming right out on the heels of this report, and that will be about our Guaranteed Energy Savings Act project that's going into a phase 3. And we have Reynolds here to present once again, Damian Spar.
Good evening, nice to see you again. I'm sorry, Mike.
Oh, my voice carries, but not to the entire audience. Excuse me. Good evening, nice to see you all again. The presentation I have for you tonight is going to look very similar, although there's important things that have occurred since the last time we talked. Namely, we've been able to fix the cost. I had given you a cost a while ago, and I showed up again and I said, I'm nervous about the cost. We actually had a couple of bid events and really worked very hard with a lot of contractors to get down within the cost, and we have achieved just getting under our budget. The other thing that was important was that we looked at the units that we were providing and we said, we want to take Mr. Traska over to see these units work, make sure that they work well in a school environment. And we did that, and those units work very well for the districts that are using them. And he was able to come back and say, absolutely, this is a very good thing for what we're proposing at Miller. So what I have for you tonight is just to go over this one more time, and then at some point this evening, I believe you'll be able to have a vote on this and make your decision. A couple of other points. There are some housekeeping issues from past projects that I wanted to update you on. We are, you remember we have to re-grout in the pool at Sandburg. That is scheduled to begin on the 19th of June. That's been coordinated with the district for programs, and that will run basically through July. The requesting boiler and the pool heater and everything that goes with that, we've waited until we were basically off heat. We're going to get that started. We're actually in there this week working, and that'll be finished right about the time school lets out. So that's all being taken care of as well, and those are the last couple of pieces that we were wrapping up. So back to Miller and Buck. I had this to show, but we're having some equipment trouble here. The board members all have this, and it's very similar to what we talked about last time. At Miller, we're providing air conditioning and upgrades to the HVAC. There are new cabinet HVAC units in all the classrooms. They fully replace the existing units, including package direct expansion cooling that's interior to the unit. We have existing rooftop units that will be replaced for heating and cooling with modified duct drops as needed, and we're also replacing the existing exhaust fans. The fan coil units some fan coil units will be replaced with rooftop condensing units and refrigerant feeds. Quarters and ceilings will be adjusted as needed, taken out, put back, and so forth. We are using Daikin units, and that's what we were able to get at our budget that we expected. And again, we're going to replace the existing heating units, other units, and the pumps that service them. Other required upgrades to Miller that go really with this is we're going to provide, the company is ABR. It's a web-based open protocol digital control system for HVAC. It's the same thing we've been putting in all the other buildings. So you have really continuity throughout the district, which through all those buildings that we've worked on, and that really helps out with maintenance and ongoing work. We're providing new additional power panels to meet the requirements for the additional equipment for air conditioning. We're replacing some power panels, including new feeders to the main distribution boards, and all the new equipment gets new power to them. We're modifying some classroom casework as needed to fit the new cabinets, and again, dealing with some of those ceilings. Now, in the security vestibules, there are two. One is at Miller, one is at Buck, and I think this rounds out all the security vestibules that were required in the district. So the security vestibule at Miller is remote, and it's similar to Sandburg Schweitzer, if you're familiar with those. The vestibule at Buck works very nicely because you just walk right in and then you can get into the office. Interestingly enough, when you compare the cost of the two, because of some of the additional glass wall that we have to put up at Buck, when you split them up, it's a little bit more costly at Buck because of the extra glass wall. They're very similar. Just for general thoughts, it's like 53% versus 47% in that range between the two, so very close in cost. The new glazing in the doors will be installed to meet code and egress. That's all taken care of. We have intrusion-resistant glazing as we've used in the other vestibules here. That's been important. We have the hardware and software for ID access as provided in the other building. We're doing some different things with the vendor of that because we've been working with the old vendor and comparing it to some things that a new vendor could provide, and I think there's some service improvements with a different vendor, although it's the same equipment. And the lighting in those areas is LED. So importantly, we had said we wanted to bring the cost of this in at under $3,065,000. And by the time we got finished beating and going out to bid twice, we actually got down to $3,058,673. I always run around one direction or another, but that's what the actual cost ended up being. So the proposed construction schedule will begin off hours as long as we're coordinated with the district. Right now, we're thinking we would coordinate that for about mid-May to get in there and start doing some night work and off-hours work to be prepared to go ahead and move forward. If I find out, and I apologize, I have to leave here tonight and go to another board meeting, and cloning isn't working so well yet, so I have to try and be 2 places at once. But if I find out that the board did vote for this tomorrow, we will be placing orders for the equipment and all that stuff so that we're ready to go. And I'd like to tell you that we've kind of, this was interesting. We had this big hill on the roller coaster the first summer, a smaller hill the last summer, and really now we're kind of gliding into the station, and it shouldn't be nearly as interesting as it's been the past few summers. And we look forward to completing a successful project should you vote yes for this. Just a last note, this does not include gas service. We're still working on that with PICO. Should you want to do that in the future, this will be very easy to move over to gas, but it's a matter of PICO's initial thought is $180,000 or so, and we said, well, that's not worth it right now. As that number comes down, you can evaluate that in the future. Are there any questions?
Damien, as far as the gas is concerned, are you going to stay on top of that and
Yes.
keep us notified?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Question for you in reference to the electrical work at the schools. The contractor that's doing this work, has he done work for us before?
Yes.
And who would be the electrical inspector company that you would use?
I don't know who the electrical inspection company that will be out for them would be, but I can find out for you and let you know through administration, absolutely.
Okay, and why I ask that is some of the electrical inspection work that I'm trying to find out information on from the Tawanka Center was mandated by a certain company, and the reputation is to be paid cash down in the Lower South. And I'm hoping that it's not the same electrical inspector that they pretty much demand at no will to, us. Okay, so, I would just like to try to use a different electrical inspector, someone that's, familiar with the township, but not done work for the Tawanka Center.
I will do research on that and report back to administration. I am not aware of any problem like that on GISA jobs.
Okay, I'm just more interested in finding out what electrical inspector will be doing the final inspection. Thank you.
We'll advise. Thank you.
You're the rough-in inspection and the final inspection. That'd be fine.
Yes, sir. I understood.
By name and address. Thank you.
Damon, I have a question about future needs over at Miller. Part of that, better yet, are there any future improvements that are needed at the school that are going to increase the amount of electricity that's necessary? And I say that because last year we voted to replace a 7-year-old boiler at Pequessing. So are we planning for our future so that we're not going to need to do something like that over at Miller as well?
I'm not aware that there's any significant immediate future, like shorter term future need over there like that. I would want to ask Mr. Traska to be sure, but I'm not aware of any, or aware of anything that would drive your electrical costs up. The use of air conditioning is always an issue. So you have some reduction, you have some additional efficiencies in the controls and things like that. And depending on how you use it, you can kind of start to offset it. But really, it's the air conditioning load that is more of a driver of electrical costs than anything else that I'm aware of over there.
One more question, sir. Did we not replace the power generator, backup generator down in Lower South? One of the schools down there, Pequessing or something?
I have to look. That sounds familiar, but I need to look at that and get back to you with exactly what school that is.
Okay, because I understand that was supposed to be installed or reinstalled at Buck, from what I understand. And if it's not, I would like to know.
I don't think the reinstallation was part of what we were doing. I think that was part of what
Just
was
the
being
boiler?
done through the school. But let
Okay,
me
the school
look at
district's
that
going to
too.
do that?
Yeah, that's what I believe.
So we have possession of the generator?
I believe you
I would
do.
assume so.
But
Okay, because I know we.
I'll confirm that.
I know we upgraded that accordingly to the future demand. It was according to refrigeration and things. I was just hoping that, we had some more decisive information as far as demand at Pearl Buck and Miller.
I can look at that. You mean with respect to the emergency generator?
That's correct.
Yes, I can do that. If that, Mr. Feather, if that's part of what you were after? Yes, sir. I'll look at that for Buck and Miller.
Thank you.
The way I remember that, Mike, is that that generator was transferred to Buck. That was when Mr. Minotti was still here, and it was a Neshaminy staff that did the transportation and the installation. The generator was part of this Giza Phase 2 supplemental, if I remember correctly. All right, so that was done on the installation of generator Pequesing was done under Giza. But the transfer and hookup at Pearl Buck, we did in-house.
Damien, I'm just going to ask, what was the reason for replacing that generator? What was the cause for the need for that 7-year-old generator to be replaced? Do you recall?
Was it 7 years old?
And it was at Pequesing, yes. There were some refrigeration units that were upgraded, if I'm not mistaken, and we replaced that generator for that reason?
That was on the advice of Mr. Minotti. I don't think Damien's aware of that part of it because they didn't recommend that. Supplemental, Phase 2 supplemental was a district initiative that Mr. Minotti put forth for things that he wanted to see get done. From my recollection of the conversation, it was due to the refrigeration load in the school cafeteria that was causing the issue, and that he felt we needed to upgrade that. And Pearl Buck's generator was outdated and old and needed to be replaced, so it kind of fell in line, is the way I understand the conversation. But I don't know if Damien was involved in speccing that. That may have been Mr. Minotti who specced it for Pearl Buck.
That was the genesis of why, I think, was partly because, and as Mr. Peritano said, we had there was a load and there was a desire to be able to keep the coolers and the refrigeration units running in a power outage. And the idea was maybe you wouldn't replace it if you couldn't have taken it and moved it somewhere else and used it, but there was a kind of a double need, so replace one, move the old unit to a different location. But I will verify that for you as well as the Miller and Buck.
That whole issue was the Giza 2 amendment, which included the replacement of that generator. 2 shop classes were renovated, and we replaced a 15-year-old boiler at Pequesing as well. My next question would be, have you been through Pearl Buck, and what kind of efficiency improvements are necessary there? It's my understanding that we still have some of the original windows in that school. Does anyone have a comment on that?
I will have to go and look at our notes. We were never, since the very early on, and I can't tell you what any significant deficiencies were, but from very early on, there was not an identification of any significant need at Pearl Buck, and really the only need that fell out was the immediate need for the security vestibule.
Well, talking about significant needs then, did we actually need to do all that work under the Giza 2 amendment? Shouldn't we have been looking for efficiency improvements over at our other schools, such as Pearl Buck?
Giza 2 amendment was under the advice of our then facilities director, Paul Minotti. He presented a case to the board. A majority of the board agreed with him, and we did it. Whether or not you could go through every single one of our schools and find a different need here, a different need there. Part of the emphasis was to get better pricing because they were in the building doing work, and they could bid it with the original bid for that Giza program. That saved us money. That was the case that was presented. That's what the board agreed with. Is there a case that we could say that we could have spent some more money at another school? I would say that's definitely true, but it didn't fit the parameters of what we were presented by the administration at the time.
We still spent $2 million for that Giza 2 amendment. We're spending $3 million now for the things that are necessary over at Walter Miller for the most part, and just the vestibule at Pearl Buck. I guess what I'm getting at, well, part of what I'm getting at with this too is I'm hoping that we're looking for our future needs as well and not having to replace that same generator that we just put at Pearl Buck from Pequessing within 7 years.
And I agree with you, and I think Mr. Traska at our last
It
facilities
was 2
meeting.
meetings ago that we went over our long-range, 2 meetings ago, Mr. Trask, I think you missed that business committee meeting. He went over our long-range needs of the future out 10 years, I believe, to start looking at all of that.
And just as a piggyback on that too, because I went to pull up that document, and in that long-range facility plan, you're right, Pearl Buck, the window replacement is the first window replacement he's identified. He has that out a couple of years only because, you know, that you can't do everything in 1 year. But both Pearl Buck and here at Maple Point are identified for window replacements.
Can I get a copy of that?
Oh, sure. It's posted on the.
Is it on the board docs?
Yeah, on the board docs.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Any other questions?
Your indulgence.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. We're going to move to our public comment. Please state your name, area you reside, your profession. Please, no personal attacks. Mrs. Burns, please.
Victoria, I think it's Spino Nias.
That's why I give the list to Mrs. Burns.
It's Spanonies, so just in case future. I've actually come out to speak about the STA outsourcing for the bus. I'm sure you guys aren't surprised about that within the current, news media and everything else that gets out there. I have a personal attachment to this because I have many clients who have worked through the Neshaminy School District busing situation, and not that I have personal attachments to them and making sure that they have jobs, but I do know that they care personally about our children and their safety. I know with the recent happening that happened about, last Friday, with the gentleman who abandoned the bus full of students, and whether or not there was a police officer there, it still was a travesty. I mean, someone should not treat their job like that. First off, they should not treat a job that entails taking care of children. I think that is the first and foremost important thing. I also have many clients who come to me, and they're parents of children in the Neshaminy School District, and they've had other issues. And my child's in 3rd grade at Tawanka, and I know about a year and a half ago, we also had an issue, and I had spoken to the transportation department, and I also spoke to the school district about one of these bus drivers cursing at my children because they did not know the way to get to our house. The children were trying to direct them to get to the house, and I understand kids can get annoying. I know that's but it does not entail them cursing and yelling at my children. I don't appreciate that. I don't expect teachers to do that in the classroom, and I hold the same regard for the bus drivers to not behave like that with my child. So those are my concerns. I feel like they're not being vetted as much as the Neshaminy School District bus drivers, and I feel like they don't have the same care as our Neshaminy School District bus drivers. Many of the Neshaminy School bus drivers, they have had children or currently have children in Neshaminy School District, and they have a different concern for our children. And that's my first and foremost concern is not only my child, but for other people's children in this school district. Is that all I do? I'm sorry, this is my first meeting.
No, that's fine. You did fine.
Good. Thank
you. And just for the record, excuse me, did you say the area you reside in your profession? I wanted to get that down. You mentioned clients. I just wanted to know.
Well, Currently, right now, I take care of accounts for my husband's business, which he owns in off of Philmont. He does automotive tinning, window tinning.
Okay, that's fine. No, I
And-
just wanna-
Okay.
And,
And I reside in Feasterville off of Neshaminy Avenue behind the
Okay.
Twanka.
thank you.
Tony Crooks?
Good evening. My name's Tony Crooks. I'm from Feasterville also. Great place to live. I think you saw the sign on Street Road for years. But I represent the Lower Southampton Athletic Association. I don't know if it's fortunately or unfortunately, I've been president for 18 years. But unfortunately, thank you, Steve. But I've come here tonight to thank the board for all they've done for Lower South in granting us field usages, gym usages, and all the other things. Our organization continues to grow with leaps and bounds. Been dealing with Mr. Jones called and Mr. Tresco about field usage since Tawanka. We lost a couple fields at Tawanka, and they're working feverishly to try to replace those fields in other locations and get the other fields ready for us. Just in T-ball, we have 10 teams this year for the boys' side and 260 players. Flag football is up to 430 children in the spring. Soccer's up to 210, and softball's 200. We have men's softball at 180 and women's softball at 60, and that's just for the spring league. And we go year-round. Have a lot of people that have volunteered for years. We do it because our kids all went through the organization, received great things from it, well-rounded kids. Not only did they have school, but they learned a lot about sports from the different coaches and different people involved. And I also made a ton of friends in Lower South. If you want to learn who your friends are, you go to a baseball, basketball game, you talk to people, and guess what? You have everything in common. But thank you for your help. I hope we can count on it in the future, and I just want you to put a face with mine. I know Belinda has talked to me for years in facilities, and she's been her pleasure not to meet me, so no, I'm just kidding. But thank you very much for everything you do, and we hope to count on you continued support. Thank you.
Steve Rodas?
Good evening. I'm Steve Rodas. I live in the villages of Flowers Mill. I am retired. I want to bring three things to your attention today. First, one is on your agenda, and that's approving the retirement of Connie Mullins. Now, she is a fantastic individual, a fantastic secretary. Many of you don't know that she is the one who all of the substitute teachers interface with before 7 o'clock every morning. She gives out your job and your assignment. And in addition, she always has a good word for everybody. And she has an uncanny ability to be able to find you when an unforeseen need arises and you might be needed to do something out of the schedule you had already been assigned.
No matter how hard you try to hide?
That is correct. But that's what I heard. I don't really know that from personal. Anyway, that's the first thing. She is fantastic, and she will be hard to replace, and I hope you do a good job replacing her. Second, I want to bring up something that came up on March 23rd. Supreme Court of the United States unanimously found that the federal IDEA law requires schools to provide special education services sufficient to allow students to make academic progress. In their argument, the defendant school district, which was Douglas County, that's from an outside state, made the claim that they were obligated only to provide children enrolled in special education a menu of services that offered nothing more than a trivial educational benefit. Supreme Court, however, rebuked the district, saying a student offered an educational program providing merely more than de minimis progress from year to year can hardly be said to have been offered an education at all. Now, I believe when this case gets filtered down through all the districts, it's going to require a pretty large revamping of some IEPs. I don't know that for a fact, but I'm sure since it was IEPs that they were talking about, the IEPs of, in this case, a student on the autism spectrum, I believe that this is probably going to affect a lot of IEPs in the district, since more and more kids are evaluated with autism. And this concerns me, but somebody brought up a question to me that concerned about the level of support provided to children with significant behavioral challenges as autism. I was told the students are in a regular classroom for all their academic instruction. And there's a behavioral specialist that sees them once per week during their lunch to provide behavioral guidance and instruction. And this specialist is also tasked with supporting the individualized behavioral programs in the second grade class. So ultimately, 1 day per week is probably insufficient to provide the amount of education that is going to be found what you need to provide under this new decision from the Supreme Court of the United States. And since they do have the last word in usually everything, I would say that it behooves our district to get on in front of the curve and really work to do something. Finally, band uniforms, a budget item. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. All right, at this time, I'm going to make a motion to approve the minutes, treasurer's report, check register, budget transfers, bids, investments, and exonerations. Can I get a second, please? Mr. Sullivan, thank you for the second. Any questions, comments, or concerns on those items?
Mr. Congdon, I would like to be able to ask a question about investments 2.06.
Sure.
Can we just pull it out, or do you want me to ask a question now, or how would you like to address that? Once again, I've brought this up a number of times, and I'm not expecting to get a different answer, but, for the public's, edification. Interest rates have been moving, but, we have many major investments, millions of dollars invested with PASLAD. The state's been talking about giving school districts some more flexibility. I mean, currently we have investments ranging from 0.5 to 1.0. Is there any other vehicles available to us? Has the state come up with any movement to allow the school district to seek some better rates? I mean, we have one investment's $34 million, and we're getting 0.77 on it. So could you add any light on that?
The interest rates are just beginning to increase now. The new law with the Act 10 investments, most of the school districts are not going there yet. They are a little bit more risky, even though they were approved. So everyone is a little bit more cautious and moving slowly with going away with what we traditionally are able to invest in.
Is there maybe an opportunity for the board, maybe to for the administration to bring in some people that maybe can talk to us about what's available? Some people from the professional outside groups that I'm sure they're going to come in wanting us to buy what they're selling, but I'm just looking to get some more information and see how the district can yield something in a safe environment for the taxpayers other than what we're currently allowed to do.
Yeah, I can talk to some folks and have some people come into the Business Operations Committee.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns? All right, be it there none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Passes 9-0. All right, we're going to move to the Personnel Administrative. Mr. Parentano, please.
Resolved that the Neshaminy Board of School Directors hereby approves the temporary appointment of Stephen McAloon as the acting assistant principal at Pequessing Middle School from May 8th, 2017 to June 30th, 2017 at his current rate of pay, with any additional time beyond the last teaching day compensated at a per diem rate.
Thank you, Mr. Parentano. Can I get a second, please? Ms. Hollenbeck, any questions, comments, concerns? Be it there none, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Passes 9-0. At this time, I'd like to make a motion to approve the retirements, resignations, leaves of absence, return from leave, appointments, and the co-curricular appointments, items 4.01 through 4.05. I'd like to make that motion. Can I get a second, please? Second. Mr. Rudy, thank you for the second. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Be it there none, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Passes 9-0. We're going to go to the personnel for the support. Ms. Hollenbeck, please.
I'd like to make a motion to approve retirements, resignations, leave of absences, return from leave, appointments, co-curricular resignations, and co-curricular appointments, which is 5.01 through 5.06.
Thank you, Ms. Hollenbeck. Can I get a second, please? Mr. Parentano, thank you for the second. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Be it there none, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Passes 9-0. Educational development. Ms. Boyle, please.
I'd like to make a motion to approve a revised 2016-17 school calendar and 2017 graduation date, mandated student physicals, and overnight trips. That's 6.01 through 6.03.
Thank you, Ms. Boyle. Can I get a second, please? Mr. Sullivan with a second. Thank you. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Be it there none. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Passes 9-0. And once again, June 14th, Wednesday evening, I believe, is our graduation date. Just to remind everybody again. Okay, at this time, we're going to move to item 7, our business operations. Ms. Hollenbeck, please.
I'm going to read motion 7.01, Mr. President.
Okay, I will gladly will separate 7.01 out then. Steve, please.
Whereas the Neshaminy Board of School Directors desires to move forward with Phase 3 of the Guaranteed Energy Savings Act project, and whereas the Neshaminy Board of School Directors approved the appointment of Reynolds Energy Services, Inc. to provide all the necessary services, including construction upgrades related to energy-efficient measures at Carl Sandburg Middle School, Albert Schweitzer Elementary School, and Herbert Hoover Elementary School, Phase 1, Joseph Furtabar Elementary School and Pequessing Middle School, Phase 2, and whereas the Neshaminy Board of School Directors desires all necessary services related to energy efficiency measures at Walter Miller Elementary School, which consist of replacement of select HVAC equipment, installation of additional air conditioning, and upgrading electrical as needed, including construction upgrades, provide a new security vestibule at Walter Miller Elementary School, and provide a new security vestibule at Pearl Buck Elementary School. And whereas this Phase 3 scope addition to the overall GIZA work will be provided as recommended in the presentations to the Business Operation Committee of the Board held on November 29, 2016, and summarized in presentations to the full Board on January 10, 2017, and March 28, 2017. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Neshaminy School Board of Directors hereby accepts the amended proposal from Reynolds Energy Services, Inc. for Phase 3 for additional scope. Items to the overall GIZA project in a not-to-exceed amount of $3,058,673, and the revised overall GIZA contract sum of $34,889,737 with energy savings guaranteed under PA Act 39, 57, and 77 guidelines. Be it further resolved that the proper officers of the school district are authorized and directed to sign the agreement in the form presented at this meeting, which agreement has heretofore been reviewed and approved by the school district solicitor, and to perform or cause to be done and performed on behalf of the school district any and all actions or things as may be necessary in connection with the agreement in order to carry out the purposes of this resolution.
Thank you for that motion, Steve. Can I get a second, please?
Second.
Ms. Boyle, thank you for the second. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
Yes, I didn't read that before I wanted to read that, so. What I would like to say is this is the final phase of the roadmap project, which we undertook starting back in 2014. Phase 3 hopefully will complete as well as Phase 1 and Phase 2 did, on time, on budget. This is a not-to-exceed number, and we've seen a great amount of improvement in the facilities for our children, and this will bring our 2 remaining elementary schools. All elementary schools will now have air conditioning as well as security vestibules. And I think we've created a great environment for our children to learn and for our staff to work in, and security for the future for our buildings. So I would hope the board would approve this project so we can bring it to a conclusion. Thank you.
All I ask is that I get the information I requested for the final inspections and rough inspections of the company, and we do not use the final inspector that I understand that we used at the Tawanka Center. Thank you.
All right. Be it there no further questions, comments, or concerns? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes 9-0. And at this time, 7.02 and 7.03, Ms. Hollenbeck, please.
The plaques are your baby. I'd like to make a motion to approve 7.02 and 7.03 commemorative plaques for the Giza projects and Tawanka. The tax appeal you want me to read separately, correct?
There's a 7.04 that you're going to have to read, yes.
Okay. Do you want me to read that now or after this motion?
No, we did 7 point on the
02,
plaques.
okay.
Thank you for that motion. Can I get a second, please? Mr. Parentano, any questions, comments, concerns? Hit the button, please.
Can we separate them?
Separate.
02 and 03?
Sure.
02 is basically being paid for, I understand, by Reynolds, correct? Whereas
That's correct.
the Tawanka plaque would be paid for by the district. And looking at that plaque, I believe it's above and beyond what we normally do for, as far as plaques go. I mean, we normally only put in the directors that actually vote on that particular item, not prior directors who, approve, prior plans.
Want to separate these out then?
I second the motion.
There wasn't a motion. We have a motion on the table
To separate.
for 7.02 and 7.03. And then you're requesting, so I would like to make a motion then to separate 7.02 and 7.03. Can I get a second?
Don't you have to complete the motion that's on the table by rules, or?
No.
You could put a motion to amend it, or you could make a motion to separate it where you have multiple actions in one motion.
Can I get a second, Ron? Second? You going to second that? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right. So, yeah, let's, the motion that's on the table is now,
You have two motions. You have two motions on the table. You've separated this into two motions. You act on the first motion first, and then the second motion.
okay. Ms. Hollenbeck, please? Just, I'd like to make a motion for the 7.02. Can I get a second, please? Ron's on the second. Any questions, comments, concerns? Be it there none, all in favor?
I have a question here, sir. Okay. This is being paid for, as you were saying, by Reynolds, is that correct?
Which one?
Yes.
7.02. Okay.
Is that the question?
One moment.
Reynolds, that's a donation of those plaques.
Fair enough, thank you.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns on 7.002? 02. No? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? No, I'm opposed. You're opposed? Yes. Okay, that's two, the roll call? Mrs. Burns, please.
Ms. Boyle?
Yes.
Mr. Congdon?
Yes.
Mr. Feather?
No.
Mrs. Hollenbeck?
Yes.
Mr. Morris?
No.
Mr. Parentano?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Santa?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
7 yes, 2 no.
Now the motion on the floor is for 7.03. Can I get a second for that one?
I'll second.
Mr. Parentano got there before you, Irene. All right, any questions, comments, or concerns on that one?
One moment, please, I'm just pulling this up.
Can you yield the second there, Mike? I just want to do an explanation.
Sure.
Thank you. All right, for the members that were at the last board meeting, for the last business meeting, we discussed this, for which the business committee voted to put it to the full board. This is my suggestion. I'm the one that asked the business committee to consider this. The 2013 board directors, in my opinion, should have been included on the dedication plaque that's in Tawanka now. For whatever reason happened when that plaque was designed, it was never put before the board for final discussion and recognition. The project that started Tawanka, that led to the roadmap, which brought the Giza into it, started with William Ottinger's ad hoc committee. He was the chair of the ad hoc committee at the time that first brought the project up. It started actually in 2012. When out of his committee, they formed the 2012 Citizens Committee on Consolidation. Mr. Webb was the president of the board at the time, who made those committee assignments, and that work was conducted, under his presidency. Mr. Kudaradis was involved in that as well. I feel those board members should be duly recognized, because if they didn't start that process, we would have never ended up at that, where we ended up. I feel the citizens that spent their time, I believe they met for over 6 months in 2012 and 2013, the members of the Citizens Committee on Consolidation. We happen to have one of their representatives here tonight, Mr. Rodas, was served on that committee. I feel they should be recognized. The Lower South Township supervisors and staff, that project went from shovel in ground to opening up to students in 18 months, on time, on budget, reduced permit fees. They helped to expedite all the processes by which we could get the permits done in time and get it done and get it open. Without their cooperation and help, we couldn't have done that. There is no other school district you'll find in Bucks County that was able to bring a elementary school, online, brand new, destroy one old building, redo the grounds. So I think, it's nice to recognize people that helped. And plus, this Neshaminy community. You can't do this without the Neshaminy community. I think we should say things about our Neshaminy community. That's what the plaque represents. If we would have had the opportunity on the original plaque, I would have made the motions at the time to include the same recognition on there. That's my opinion as one board member. I'm asking for the board to agree with those recognitions. Of course, you're entitled to your own opinion on the subject. Thank you.
Mr. Paratano, do you know the plaque that's there right now, how that states? Whose name's on it?
I believe it shows 2014, 2015 board members, I believe. Do you have the representation there?
I have it here. It lists board members from 2015, John Allen, Susan Cummins, Mark Shubin, and Anthony Spazzato. And then board members from 2016, and I believe that's our sitting board here, Mr. Feather, Ms. Hollenbach, Mr. Morris, Mr. Paratano, Mr. Rudy, Mr. Sana, Mr. Sullivan, and the president and vice president are separated out, Ms. Boyle and Mr. Cotton.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's on-time delivery. Mr. Paratano, I see that we need 5 votes in the forum to get anything across here. The recognition of the board in whole, if you supported it or not, I believe that's what, where I'm driving this down to. You can either list all the board directors with the thanks, because not just the citizen committee, other directors have been involved and on the front line of this also. I'm not taking anything away from the gentlemen that you have listed here, but 5 votes is what it takes. We know that to get something through here. I think you should recognize all the directors.
I believe, Mike, when I've gone through the list, I think I did capture all the directors that were involved in that period of time. I believe everyone that was involved from when they formed the original ad hoc committee until the point that we completed the building, I believe between the 2 plaques, every board director that sat on this board, regardless of whether they voted yes or voted no, is recognized. And I'm sure we can have administration double check that if you're correct. If there's someone that was in there and we didn't recognize, they were there at that time, you're correct. We should recognize them.
Do you have anybody in mind?
I'm just looking at 3 board directors, and we have 9. That's all I'm saying.
Were they
Are you asking that we state redundant names? Because I don't think that's proper, but.
You're saying the 9 board members at that time?
Yes, if we're recognizing the special thanks, I think we should recognize the entire board, either by name or the board. And I'm not trying to get any fame here, but, a lot of people, and as Mr. Paratano said, they spend a lot of time on it, but we all spend a lot of time on it, including yourself, me, and everything.
Is this going to be next to the current plaque?
Yes. It's gonna be the
So
2
it's talking about, it says additional recognition, correct? So if everyone, to Mike's point, if everyone on the original plaque and the additional plaque encompasses all board members. as long as they're
I think that was the thinking. That's how I understood your thinking, Mr. Paratano.
Okay, fair
is that
enough.
We'd have
Thank
the
you.
original plaque, plus this would be in addition to that.
Fair enough.
I mean, I got a picture of him, like, if you want to see it, on my phone somewhere.
No, I'm good, thank you.
You got it? Okay.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns? I believe we have the motion for 7.03, and we had the second.
Yes, I would just want to make one comment. If this is agreed to by the board, I would just ask that the administration reach out to these additional individuals, let them know what our intentions are, make sure we spell their names correctly, and if for any reason they would object, then, you would, they're not here to speak for themselves, but I don't know why they would, but if they would, then, we would honor their wishes.
I have one question. Do we have a cost for this plaque?
I do. $730 and that's pricing it out for the same size of those Giza plaques that are being donated. So using that exact same size, that's a 16 by 22 size. So.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns? I'm just going to move straight to roll call. Mrs. Burns, please. Yes is for the plaque. No is against the plaque.
Ms. Boyle?
Yes.
Mr. Congdon?
Yes.
Mr. Feather?
No.
Mrs. Hollenbach?
Yes.
Mr. Morris?
No.
Mr. Parentano?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
No.
Mr. Santa?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
6 yes, 3 no.
All right. Thank you. Business operations, Ms. Hollenbach, we're not done with you yet. 7.04, please.
I'd like to make a motion For 7.04 tax assessment appeal, resolved that the Neshaminy School District hereby approves the settlement of the pending 2014 through 2017 tax assessments appeals of Bucks IP Associates LP, which is tax map parcel number 22-021-066-066 as follows. Settlement assessment, $444,000 in 2014, $432,000 in 2015, $463,300 in 2016, and $466,200 in 2017.
Thank you for that motion. Can I get a second, please? Mr. Prantano, thank you. Thank you for the help. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
I just want to add a comment. I just want to thank our professional staff as well as our solicitor. This is one of those instances where the appeals board reduced by a great amount what was owed the district, and through our process of challenging that, we came up with a settlement that's very beneficial to the district, and I just appreciate everybody's hard work from the business office and our solicitor and making sure that our taxpayers are treated fairly, and the district as well. Thank you.
And I have to agree with Steve's point as well. This was something that was in excess as a reassessment, and our, like Steve said, business and Tom got together, looked at it, and our solicitor found that it didn't seem right, and we went, and this is one of those times where we do go and appeal, and the appeal worked out great. Almost 65% to 70% return. So, I mean, that's 65 to 70% of this return that we wouldn't have had if they didn't notice that appeal. So I very much appreciate that effort as well. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Be it there none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Passes 9-0. Okay, at this time, we're going to move to committee reports. The business operations, Ms. Hollenbeck, please.
So the next business operations meeting is Wednesday, April 12th, and that is strictly just about the upcoming preliminary budget to see where we stand versus last time we reported on it.
Thank you. Educational Development, Policy, and IU Board. Mrs. Boyle, please.
Okay, the next educational development meeting is going to be April 27th at 6:30 here in the boardroom. And we're going to talk about the Chromebooks, the dual enrollment, the report cards, and an AVID. Okay. Now, the policy committee is going to be, April 25th at 6:30. And, yes. And we're going to talk about the volunteer policy, the homework policy, and we also are going to discuss the transgender problem. Okay, so now the IU, the next meeting is April 18th, and that's going to be actually here in the Lower Southampton Early Learning Center. And it's going to be an open house, so anybody is welcome to come.
What was the date of that?
18th.
Is that a Tuesday?
I think so, probably. Yeah, they usually are. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
All right, thank you, Ms. Boyle. And I'm sure my children will be very interested in that homework policy. So, all right, at this time, we're going to move to the Neshaminy Education Foundation. Mr. Feather, please.
Nothing to report or update at this moment.
Thank you. Tech School, Mr. Rudy, please.
Okay, we met yesterday. I know we missed the report from last month, but it was pretty inconsequential. However, yesterday's was a little more involved. We determined the graduation date, which is going to be June 15th at the Sun Center in Trenton. We also went through the capital improvement project, which basically we were looking at renovation options coming up that they want to look, projects that they want to try to get done there. And the next item was the budget overview, which was unanimously approved at a 2.5% increase. However, a net was primarily because of PCERS, salaries, and healthcare. However, Neshaminy's share, due to 2 years ago, we had a lower enrollment, so we're actually down 140,000 from last year. So that's, at least we didn't get $1 million increase like we did last year. Our next meeting will be April 24th, 7:30.
Your graduation June 15th, though, that's indoors?
Yes, it's at the Sun Center in Trenton.
I hate to ask this question. What's our rain date if we're the 14th?
Next day, 15th.
We're going to have to think that through. I don't know if we can, because we have Neshaminy students.
We'll talk to the.
Yeah, we want to make sure we.
And see that we time that right.
Yeah, we want to just
we'll
make sure
talk.
there's no, no situations where it's going to be a conflict.
We'll look into that.
All right, thank you.
I just want to ask one quick question to Mr. Rudy. By any chance, Mr. Rudy, are you aware of what the capital funds reserve for the tech school is? Do you know if they're carrying a reserve or?
They have some reserve. Maybe you would know better, Barbara. I'm not aware at this point. No, I'm not on that committee, but I could find out for you.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Paratano, we do have some reserve in the healthcare fund. Those funds need to go right back into healthcare cost. So those funds will be funneled back in to next year's healthcare cost.
Does that allow their budget to maybe take advantage of that infusion from that fund and maybe lower your budget number so you can steer other reserve funds? Like if you got $200,000 in the healthcare fund and you're able to put that into your healthcare budget, are you then able to shift some of that cost to some other needed projects, or their budgeting doesn't allow that?
I don't believe there, yeah. And the prom date is May 4th at the tech school. At the tech school.
I don't have that information. Mr.
Sorry.
Morris.
All right. Ron, you had the most popular report tonight. That was great. The PSBA liaison, Steve, please.
I was not able to make the February 27th meeting at the Middle Bucks Tech School. I was, though, able to view, and all board members can view on the PSBA website, the presentation. No surprise that the topic of the evening was school board budgets and how to raise enough revenue to meet demands. Talked about basic education funding, why the governor is proposing an increase in basic education funding, and I believe Mrs. Markowitz covered this a couple meetings ago. There is going to be a reduction in the transportation allowance. How that works out yet, nobody knows. It was some interesting facts that I found interesting. I don't know if anybody else would, but Pennsylvania's funding formula, we're 46th in the country for relying on local revenue to fund the schools. And we're 4th in the country for generating that local revenue to fund the schools. I found that very interesting that while these burdens keep growing, our only real recourse is looking to our local municipalities, our residents, and finding ways to cut costs. A few years ago, boards at the time, the only choice they had was to cut programs in order to save money on costs. I don't want to see us go down that road again. We want to keep building programs. We've got a pretty good record of doing it, but the funding outlook, I'm sorry to say, it looks bleak, and the obligations, and the number one discussion on obligations, of course, was pension. Right now there's no relief in sight. So as we enter this budget cycle, we got to keep our noses to the grindstone and make sure that we put our kids' needs first, and we make sure we respect what our taxpayers can afford to pay, because we're going to be funding this district right here. The funding's not going to come from anywhere else. So I know that's not what you want to hear, but that's basically what it was about. And if you want to, it was a good presentation. If you want to go on their website and view the presentation, I think you'll get something out of it. So thank you.
Okay. Is there any other board business? Be it there none. We're going to move to our second portion of public comment. Once again, we limit it to 3 minutes. Please state your name, area you reside, and your profession. There's no list this time, so you can just proceed to the podium if you'd like to make comment.
Susie Drake, Neshaminy High School English teacher, just speaking, sorry, on behalf of the Ed Foundation, and just reiterating that we're having a major fundraising event on April 29th, the Harlem Wizards. It is our hope that this becomes a signature event for the foundation and becomes a huge event that's supported by all of the Neshaminy community. Mr. Stanley has been working very hard on getting an all-star team. It's going to be a great night. Tickets are priced well for families to attend, and I know calendars are filling up, so I encourage everybody to check your calendar, check the district website. There's more information there. I apologize for not being better prepared to speak about it, but it should be a fun night for all.
Just to clarify, we're going to have teachers playing against the Wizards, right? And
Yes.
teachers from all of our schools. I think you're looking out for all schools to participate? As many as we can get, right.
What's that date again?
April 29th. It's a Saturday, so they're like the Globetrotters, but not. Whatever. It'll be fun. April 29th. And it's getting me out of a family function, so thank you.
I waited too long.
He had the gavel in his hand.
Am I going to have to set this timer, Steve?
No, this is just a statement or a question. The problem really is about pensions and how they're calculated, how they're funded. But I don't think that the state can do anything about the people that already work for a particular school district. And whatever they're behind, they're going to be behind forever unless they do something which is separate and apart from new hires. And so they've managed to solve the problem by doing nothing, which unfortunately doesn't benefit a soul in the state of Pennsylvania, except for those individuals who make money off of selling the investments to the retirement organizations, to that Pennsylvania Retirement Board. Those guys don't worry because they are the ones making the money. And I don't understand why nobody can get through to these senators and representatives that really start. Just go out and buy a mutual fund that's no load, and you'll save more money than you're making with these guys who are taking money off the top just by investing it. So it's a whole crazy system. I don't foresee it being solved unless you get all new people in there, and with gerrymandering and everything else, you can't get new people in there. So we're really stuck for the foreseeable future unless somebody takes the bull by the horns, so to speak. Thank you.
Okay. With that, we're going to move to board comment.
I just want to cover something that I wanted to bring up earlier, but I missed the opportunity. We do have our semi-annual report from Mr. Devlin's office, on our dockets, and Mr. Rodas had brought something up interesting about the latest ruling from the government. I was wondering if we could maybe have Mr. Devlin come to the podium for a question or two.
Yes, he can. Come on up. You're the next one up. The semi-annual reports are new. That's newly instituted here so that our district central office administrators are providing you twice a year an update on their work. So this month, Mr. Devlin presented. There's a chart there where you can see in the board docs who's going to be reporting each month. Next month, Mr. Meehan will be given a report.
Yeah.
And now it might be that they're given a report at the podium all of a sudden. Here,
Well, we're not going to get that. We're not going to get that in depth. But it's first, before I ask the question I had, Mr. Rodas had brought up a good point. Maybe you can just give a quick overview of how Neshaminy deals with that.
The report which you were speaking of, the diminutive progress, is not out of the Third Circuit. Here at the Third Circuit, we have a much higher standard than diminutive. We have meaningful progress, educational benefit. So we are already under a higher standard than out there in the West with the diminutive progress. I feel as though our IEPs are probably the best in Bucks County, and we have a very good program here at Neshaminy.
Mr. Devlin, we're getting involved in the budget, and I'm looking through different departments, and I brought this up last year. We had a conversation about it, and you provided me with some information. I was able to look and see, but I don't think at least I know I don't understand fully. I'm sure the public has less information available to them on our responsibility to those students with special needs. I mean, we have students that run the entire gamut of needs, from just basic to their fully wheelchair bound. And I'm looking at the pressures in our budget. We already spend almost $2 million on charter schools already, and I'm looking at what we're paying in our special needs, and that's fine. These are children that need it. We have a responsibility to provide it. But what I see is disparaging is that Neshaminy is carrying the full load of level 3 and level 4 students. None of these supporting charters have any level 3 or 4 students, and how could that be in this system?
Yes, Steve, what you're speaking of is the Act 16 reporting. Now, we need to report the tuition we pay for all of our special education students. Level 1, 0 to 25,000. Level 2, 25 to 50. Level 3, 50 to 75. Level 4, 75 and above, and you're correct. Our charter schools are not paying 75 and above. I want to say there may be 1 or 2 that they're paying 50 and above. But we do have students. I think we had maybe 10 level 4, a few more level 3, many level 2. And you're correct in stating that the charter schools who serve students from the Neshaminy boundaries are not paying the tuition or not paying the costs compared to the same costs that we pay here at the Neshaminy School District.
And the other information I found is when we pay for a level 1 and a level 2 student out of district, and maybe I'm understanding this wrong, but it looks like we're paying a fixed amount regardless of what services that they need.
When we pay charter schools, we pay a general education tuition and a special education tuition. The special education tuition is more than twice that of the general education, regardless of the cost of the charter to program for such a student.
But locally, let's just finish it up. Locally, if we're paying for cost in those different levels, we'll pay the exact cost, right? You're talking about when a charter school is educating one of these lower level students, they get a fixed amount regardless of the services they provide.
Exactly.
Yes.
I mean, when I'm looking through our budget numbers and I'm looking where we can, economize, and by no means am I suggesting that we economize our special needs students. What I'm concerned about the fact is I mean, if a student goes to a charter school and he has has a minor disability, which in-house may cost us $3,000 or $5,000 to service, if they're in that charter school, the way I read it, it's like $20,000. Am I reading that wrong?
I was going to say you're reading it wrong because it is higher. I want to say it's in the 30 range.
I think it's around 30.
So we pay this one set amount for a level 1 or a level 2 student, regardless of what services they need.
Correct. The travesty is actually, too, if I can add, is that the services that we provide in the Neshaminy School District are much greater than what the services that a child receives in the charter school. It would be better for all of our students to be here and take advantage of the resources we have internally and the great teachers we have here to program for those students.
Thank you, Mr. Devlin.
Mr. Devlin, in the charter schools, they generally have less teacher population. We could probably agree to that compared to Neshaminy, right?
You mean teacher-student ratio?
Yes?
I would suppose, yes.
Right. So when we have a specialist here, we can actually multitask that person, and we, as the sending school district, we have to accept whomever is in our boundaries. And we have the legal liability to do such.
Yeah, sure. Every student in our district has tenure in our building, so we need to program for whomever is out in our
Right.
buildings, yes.
But in a charter school, their costs would be higher to educate special needs, regardless of what severity. I mean, what I'm saying is, it would be cheaper for us to do it than for them to do it.
Yes, it would be more affordable for us to program internally,
Right,
yes.
because, I'm just looking at this whole thing, how it's flowing, because, maybe their cost is that high. Maybe not, I don't know. I can't argue that point, but we're not comparing apples to apples. And also, they are obligated by law, as we are, to give that student the education that they're required, correct?
Yes.
So we're comparing apples to apples there. But I guess, my concern is we're not really comparing. A parent can pull that student out if they had a choice and come to Neshaminy if we were better. Because I'm a big proponent for competition. So, I understand, we have to educate them regardless of the severity, and I'm on board with that. But it's almost like a little slant to the charter schools, and I'm a believer in charter schools. But it's not fair to say that, Neshaminy's rate compared to their rate, I wouldn't be surprised if it was higher because of their student-teacher ratio also.
Mike, I believe in, and this is when I was not a board member, and we were talking about charter schools, and we were researching cost per student. There is not a charter school that services Neshaminy that has anywhere near the obligations we have and is never anywhere near the cost per student ratio we have, plus the way the Pennsylvania law is currently written, and Barbara can correct me if I'm wrong, I still think they're benefiting from the double dip on Peasers, or did they correct that they're not getting the double payment anymore?
I think they just corrected the Peaser double dip.
Just now. So, I mean, when I personally, did the analysis, I mean, the school that wanted to come in here, their cost per student was somewhere in the $7,000 to $8,000 range. And, our commitment to them, what I believe was going to be in the $12,000 range per student, which is 80%, I believe, if I remember correctly, the cost of what we allocate per student. So I would think they have an advantage all the way around as far as cost per student in operation, yet Neshaminy does what it should be doing, and we have to take and want to take any student that comes to our doors. And like I said, for us to have all the level 3 and level 4 students, great. We need to educate them. It's our responsibility. We're going to do it. But for none of the surrounding, charters to have that obligation, it just something. Look, the system ain't perfect. I guess it's never going to be perfect. But I don't think if it's apples to oranges, it's the other way. I don't think it's the way that you may think it is or presented it. None of the research I've done has shown that there's anybody that we're supporting that's higher than us, because we have obligations that no other entity has. I mean, they don't have unionized teachers or staff in their buildings. I mean, so It's a question we won't answer at this board, but it's definitely worth further discussion. We need to know these things so we know what we're up against. So, thank you.
I just have one comment related to food services, and I'm not trying to single you out, and I'm not asking you to please get up here now. But, Joe, the last time you were here, I think there were some issues with some of the personnel with regard to management, and I was wondering if at some point in the near future you could probably you could give us some kind of an update on that. Not now.
Yeah, we'll get a report out. We'll do that.
Jerry, you have anything else, Ron?
No.
You and Barb good?
Yep.
All right. I'd like to thank Victoria for coming out and speaking this evening with her concerns. They are definitely being looked at and looked into. Tony, thank you for coming out and speaking with us with the field usage and whatnot. It's a big thing in Lower South. It's a big thing in Middletown. You know, athletic associations. We want to work in conjunction with you, definitely. Steve, you've gotten some of your answers, and you'll get some more. I thank you. And Mr. Devlin, thank you for coming up as well. I very much appreciate that. With that being said, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Can I get a second, please? Second. Mr. Sullivan with the second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you, everyone. Good night.